again and welcome to the channel. My name is Annie and this is my creative detour. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope you've all had a wonderful week so far. Now I'm doing a very quick project today. I'm going to be doing some stamping, and I'm going to be doing spotlight stamping. Now for those of you that don't know what spotlight stamping is, it's basically stamping a circle spotlighting a particular focal point. Now sometimes you might color this in, you might stamp a circle on it and then color it in and then leave all the rest plain, but in this situation I have just stamped a solid color onto it and not put a whole heap of color anywhere else, so that your eye is drawn to a focal point. Now maybe about 4 months ago I did a video of some stamping and said on the video that I love stamping but I don't get to do it very often, and if you wanted to see me doing more stamping projects, just to leave a message. And so some of you put in the comments that you would like to see more stamping projects, and I remembered that, and today is one of those days where I'm going to do mainly just stamping. I'm not really doing anything else other than putting it together. You can see that I've used some light bulbs here. And I've also used some scrapbook paper in the background so that it is super quick. I used 49 and mark it, and then I've just stamped on some text in the background, and I have done a few labels at the end, but I stamped the circle first of where I wanted the light bulbs, then I stamped the light bulbs on top, and then I put some little moths around and some labels, and it says choose to shine. And that's just a sentiment out of Tim Holt's Small Talk. And then I have stitched around it. I'm not sure whether the camera's picking that up, but there's some stitching on the edge. And then I've just glued it to a backing of some cardstock and put a eyelet and twine on it. And I finished it off with some twine for the wires of the lamps. So the project was super easy. So have a look in your supplies and find some stamps that have a focal point. Now I'm going to be doing with you this one, and this is All in Create number 539, and it's called Gem of a Plant. And I think it might be a hellebore flower, and I'm going to stamp the spotlight on that and this stamp and put it together. So it's going to be super quick. I have pulled out some 49 and market scrapbook paper or pattern paper, and that's partly because it's already got some information on the background that's subtle, and we're going to get stamping. So let's get our mat set up and I'll show you the process. Okay, so you can see that I have stuck down my piece of paper to my mat just with a piece of washi, and to be honest, I've actually filmed this once before. You can see that I've already done this. I filmed it about half an hour ago, and when I downloaded my files, the first file of this introduction and the first part of the video, there was no sound, even though I checked the sound. So I'm jumping back on to do the first part again, but that's okay. So you might see that this is green paper at the moment, but when you get further into the video, it goes to more of an apricot color. So we'll keep moving forward, but what I wanted to say was I'm going to be using a spotlight stamp. Now the stamp I'm using is a retired Stampin' Up! Stamp, and it's called Watercolor Shapes, and I use it quite a lot. It's a great stamp and I love the effect that it gives. But some of you may not have a circle stamp that's big enough to be able to do that. And you might be thinking, well, that's great, Annie. I don't have a circle stamp. So what can I do? And as you can see here, I have done on the previous video a DIY stencil. So what you can do is you can just use your circle punch, and punch out a circle. And then you can put it to wherever you want it to be. So let's say this was where I was wanting it. And you can use your ink and your brush to create a spotlight. So it's really easy, and I'm going to put it darker around the edge. And there we go. We have a circle spotlight. Now the other thing that you can do if you don't have a circle stamp, you can draw around a circle, the one that you've punched out maybe, or around the bottom of a glass or the lid of a jar or something like that. And then you could watercolor around the edge and then wash it into the middle so it's faded more in the middle. So there's just a few options for you to do if you don't have a circle stamp to do a spotlight like I'm doing. But I do, so let's stamp this focal point. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, you can see that I have measured my stamp and I have worked out that my stamp is going to be around about 7¼ by 2½ inches wide. So I've cut my paper bigger than that. I've cut it at least an inch bigger so that I can make sure that I get my position correct of where I want to put my spotlight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on there, and I'm looking at the grid on my mat and using it as a guide, and then I'm picking up where the flower is. So I can see that it's slightly to the right and around halfway through this main line here is the circle. So slightly to the right and halfway through. I'll ink up my stamp, and I'll use the same color as what I used in the previous video, halfway through and slightly to the right. And I'm probably going to ink that again and double stamp it. Now I double stamped it so it was a bit darker, and I don't mind that it's not perfect. And now I'm going to ink up my stamp from All and Create with the focal point on it, and I'm going to just lightly tap ink everywhere, but I'm really going to focus on the flower, putting a lot of ink on that. I might stand up for this. And I'm going to push really hard on the flower itself, but not overly hard around the perimeter, because I don't need all of that text to be really dark. Oh, that worked out well. You can see that the flower has the spotlight on it, and then the other text is fading into the distance a little bit, which is perfect. I'm happy with that. And it's super easy to do and quick. So there we go. There's my spotlighted stamp flower. So now I'm going to let that dry. I don't want it to smudge. And once it's dry, we'll be able to put the tag together. So we'll catch up with the other videos now, and you'll see that the background will now change to being more apricot than green. I'll see you in a moment. Okay, I'll just peel off that washi. And I'm going to cut this down a little bit now that I have stamped it. And I'm just going to take off some of the excess off of this that I don't want. And you can see that it's slightly crooked. So this is the time when you can straighten it. So I'm going to do the top first and get it relatively straight with something. Okay, I'll tell you what I've cut that down to. And you can see that it sits nicely on the page. So I've cut that to 2 3/4 inches, which is 7 centimeters, and in length it is 7½ inches, which is 19 centimeters. And I'm going to now just punch the corners and turn it into something that looks like a tag. And I'm going to round the bottom with a small round. And I have cut a piece of craft cardstock that is just 1/8 of an inch bigger in both directions, and I'm going to do the punching on those as well. Okay, so you can see that very quickly it is starting to look nice, but I think that it needs a balance down here in the corner. So I have a few little bits and pieces that I'm going to put on it, and I want to use that washi that I used before. So let's use that. Let's not waste that. So I'm just going to put a little bit of washi in a few spots just to carry over that colour. I think I'll run a little piece down here. Just those tiny little pops will help carry the colour through a little bit. Now you can see that I have pulled out a piece of cardstock that's similar to the colour, and I'm going to put this down the bottom here to carry that through. And I think that I'll use a little bit of this text washi tape in craft just to create sort of like a plate for it to go on of some sort. So let's just tear those edges a little bit so they're not so straight. Yeah, that's all right. And we'll put a little bit of washi down the bottom as well. So nothing complicated, I'm just using some washi that's got a similar colour in it and repeating the colour. So we'll stick those down. I'll just say a quick thank you to everybody for your lovely comments and your likes and hypes. Thank you so much for watching my videos. And if you're new here, welcome. I hope you enjoy the videos, and I do a little bit of a mixture of different things. I don't really stick to one particular style. I do tend to enjoy doing some upcycling of some sort. So I'm never quite sure what we're going to do. I don't plan it out a long way in advance. I do tend to craft with how I feel and make things on what I feel like doing rather than what I might have planned in my diary, which means that it's always a bit of a mixed bag. But if you are new, thank you for stopping by and welcome. And like I said, thank you to all my regulars for all your lovely support. It's very much appreciated. Now you can see that all I'm doing is I'm just building a little bit of a base for putting something down here to balance this out a little bit. And I have a little piece of cheesecloth here. Let's put a little bit of that on for some texture. And we might cut that down first. I have my parents arriving today. I'm super excited about it. I haven't seen them since before Christmas. We talk all the time, and as the regulars would know, that I do craft with my mother via video every Thursday, and we enjoy spending that time together. It's really important to us both that we allocate a little bit of time in our busy week. Most of the times we do it on a Thursday. If I've got to work on a Thursday, well, then we sometimes will switch the days, or if she's got an appointment. So you can see I'm just putting down that little piece of cheesecloth, and let's ink this up just a tad, just to rough those edges a little bit, give it a little bit more depth. So yes, they're flying up. Now my parents are elderly. They're doing pretty well. My dad is not as mobile as what he has been in the past. He had a fall, quite a bad fall, early last year, so early 25. He had quite a bad fall, and he actually fractured some vertebrae in his back. He fell in the garden. Their life has changed quite a bit since his fall. My mum's extremely mobile and sprightly, for her age. She's very good, actually. She's very alert and very motivated, and which is great. But it just means that she has quite a lot on her plate now. Now you can see that I just have a little number ticket that I'm putting on there. And oh, we might put a little jump ring embellishment on it. Let's do that. Now before I do that, we might just ink up the edges. See if we need some washi somewhere else. I think I'd like to stamp actually a circle. I have this circle on my desk all the time, and it's from Stampin' Up. I'd have to go looking for which one it is. It's this one, Framed Occasions, and it's this dot circle. And I actually just keep it on my desk because, as some of you would know, I love circles. And we've got quite a few circles on here, so I think I might just put a circle over here to balance that out. Oh yes, that's good. And on the other ones, let me pull out the example. On the other ones you can see, you might be able to see, I have done some stitching. So you can probably see on the spotlight there that I've done stitching around it before I glued it together. But I don't think I will do that today because some of you don't have sewing machines. So I do have examples with stitching on, but let's just do a thin line around this. To frame it. And it has that sort of loose hand feel to it, which is nice. All right, let's now ink the edges. So there you go. You can see that they come together pretty quickly. It's not complicated at all. I probably made it look more complicated than it is, but let's glue this together. And I'm just using art glitter glue. So you could stitch around it if you wanted to on the sewing machine. It adds a little bit of texture, but it's fine with it just drawn around. It looks quite nice. But really quick tags and perfect scrap buster, actually. If you've got a whole heap of scraps in your scrap box, then you could definitely do this spotlighting technique to just pump out a few bits of ephemera, some journaling cards or tags or tiny little ACTs or something like that. And all I've done in the stamping is I've stamped the spotlight and I've stamped the feature, and that's it. All right, so let's now put some finishing touches on it. I'll clean up and we'll finish it off, and then we'll have a look at the examples. Now I'm just going to put some splatters on, and you can see that I've put an eyelet in it, but I'm going to put some acrylic ink splatters, and I'm using like a copper color. These ones are called Acrylic Art Ink Essentials, and they were from Kmart here in Australia. And I'm just going to water it down a little bit because they're a bit old and they're pretty thick at the moment. They're a bit blobby actually. Let's just cover up the things we don't want splattered. There we go, that's good. So that's dry now. So now we've got a tiny little jump ring embellishment, and I'll put some twine on it. And I also have a nice little piece of frayed linen in a color that works perfectly with it. So let's push that through, and we'll tie a piece of twine around that. So yes, I had to tidy up the house a little bit and make it look pretty for Mum coming. After today's video, I'm going to scoot out and get some groceries, maybe a bunch of flowers to put in her room or on the table, something like that. And we'll stick this little jump ring embellishment on just down the bottom here. And it's just one of those little jump rings that's got some scrap paper of Nothing in particular in it, with some glossy accents, but they work well with the circle theme, don't they? There we go. I'm happy with that, actually. It was so easy to stamp and make. Just 2 stamps. Or 3 actually, because I did the circle. Alright, let's just have a quick close-up. So there we go. You can see that that copper splatter worked well with the colour palette. And the little jump ring just finished that little cluster off nicely, and the washi tape is helping with bringing the colour palette around the composition. And that'll be a nice addition to a journal or some happy mail. Now let's have a little look at the others. So this was the one that I showed you earlier, and I splattered this one with gold watercolor actually, and it says choose to shine, and I just used some Tim Holtz Small Talk stickers for that. This one I've done a little bit of other stamping. You can see I've stamped some text in the background, and it's some script and some newspaper print. And so I did do quite a bit more stamping on this one in the background to make it sort of happen. I didn't have to do it with this one that we've done today because it had quite a lot of text and additional information on the stamp, but I had to stamp up a few layers of stamping on this one in the background first before I did the spotlight, and then before I did the focal points. Now this stamp I used the Tim Holt stamp, and it was Curiosity Shop CMS482 if you're after it, and I used these 2 light globes down here, but I used them up the other way and stamped them upside down so that they were hanging. And then I just put a little bit of twine on as their wire, and the back is plain. I also did a journaling card. Now you can see that the background is darker on this one, and that's because I used 49 and Market for these, and one of the pieces of scrap that I had was a yellow base and one was a white base. It just needed a little bit of text stamped in the background. This one says shine like the whole universe is yours. Isn't that wonderful? And then you can see I put some little moth stamps around as well, and some labels. And this one I've made into a journaling card. And the last example I've got is our budgie here. Isn't he cute? And I used this stamp here from All and Create, and it's called Budgie, and it's number 691. And I just stamped some circles with that circle stamp, stamped the budgie word out and the budgerigar. And you can see I used a green spotlight on this one, and a little bit of that linen again. And I also put a little bit of washi around just to ground the nameplate down here. And we've got a number, it's a J. Lee Lou number with a little brad on it that is concealed. There we go, there's our examples of our easy spotlight stamping. I hope you enjoyed that little quick project today, and have a little bit of a fresh look at some of your stamps. And like I said, you don't have to have a circle stamp to do it. You could definitely do a stencil with a punch and cut a circle and then stencil on a spotlight, which is super easy to do. And it means that you can use up some of your scraps out of your stash, and also you're using some of those stamps that you don't get to use very often. All right, that's all from me today. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for watching today. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and think about subscribing to the channel if you're not subscribed. That would be wonderful. And I hope you find some time over the weekend to make something fun and new. And I will see you again on Tuesday with another project. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Bye for now.